I never thought I'd end up in a legal battle with my homeowner association over a lemonade stand. But here I was, standing in my driveway at 7 in the morning while Patricia Hendricks waved a citation in my face like it was a winning lottery ticket. This is a clear violation of Section 12B, Subsection 4 of the Meadowbrook Heights HOA bylaws, Patricia announced, her voice carrying across the quiet suburban street in Phoenix, Arizona. No commercial activities are permitted on residential properties. I stared at the small folding table my grandson had set up just 30 minutes earlier. Tyler was only 9 years old, and this was his big entrepreneurial venture for the summer. He'd spent the entire previous evening making signs with markers and poster board, calculating how much lemonade mix he'd need, and counting out change from his piggy bank. "Patricia, it's a kid's lemonade stand," I said, keeping my voice level. "He's trying to earn money for a new bicycle." "Rules are rules, Marcus," she said, using my full name like we were in some kind of formal proceeding. "If we let one person break the bylaws, everyone will think they can do whatever they want." Tyler looked up at me from behind the table, his eyes already getting watery. He'd been so excited about this, and now the HOA president was threatening to shut him down before he'd even sold his first cup. "Can we at least discuss this?" I asked. "Maybe there's some kind of exception for temporary non-commercial activities." "There's nothing to discuss," Patricia said. "You have until noon to remove this setup, or I'll be filing a formal complaint with the board. That comes with a $500 fine." She turned on her heel and marched back to her white Lexus, leaving me standing there with my disappointed grandson. Tyler started taking down his carefully made signs without me even asking him to. "Grandpa, does this mean I can't sell lemonade?" he asked quietly. "Let me make a phone call," I said. "Don't pack everything up just yet." I pulled out my phone and dialed my daughter Charlotte's number. She just made partner at Daniels and Associates, one of the most respected law firms in downtown Phoenix. If anyone could find a way around Patricia's ridiculous interpretation of the HOA rules, it was Charlotte. "Hey, Dad," she answered on the second ring. "What's up?" "Your son just got his first taste of bureaucratic overreach," I said. "The HOA is trying to shut down his lemonade stand." There was a pause, and then I heard that particular tone in Charlotte's voice that I recognized from years of watching her argue her way through high school debate competitions and law school mock trials. "Is Patricia Hendricks still the president, the one and only? Don't move anything." "I'm coming over and I'm bringing some documents," Charlotte said. "This is going to be fun." I walked back to where Tyler was still slowly dismantling his setup. "Hold on there, buddy. Your mom's on her way and I think she's got a plan. Is Mom going to use her lawyer powers?" Tyler asked, his face brightening a little. "Something like that." Charlotte arrived 45 minutes later in her silver Audi, wearing business casual clothes and carrying her leather briefcase. She kissed Tyler on the forehead and then spread several documents out on the lemonade stand table. "Okay, so here's the situation," she said, pulling out a highlighted copy of Arizona Revised Statutes. In 2019, Arizona passed House Bill 2290, which specifically prohibits HOAs from banning children's lemonade stands and other temporary small business ventures run by minors. It's actually state law that supersedes any HOA regulations. I felt a grin spreading across my face. "You're kidding." "Not even a little bit," Charlotte said. "The law was passed specifically because HOAs across the state kept shutting down kids' lemonade stands. Some legislators decided that was ridiculous, and they did something about it." "So Tyler can keep his stand open?" I asked. "Not only can he keep it open, but if Patricia tries to fine you or take any action against the family, she's actually violating state law. We could potentially sue the HOA for harassment and recover damages. Tyler was looking between us, not quite understanding all the legal terminology but definitely picking up on the fact that things were going his way. "What do we do now?" I asked. Charlotte pulled out her phone. "I'm going to send Patricia an email right now, copying the entire HOA board, explaining the law and making it very clear that any action they take against this lemonade stand will result in legal consequences." She typed quickly, her fingers flying across the screen. "There. Sent." I also attached a PDF of the actual statute so she can't claim she didn't know. "Will she back down?" I wondered aloud. "She doesn't really have a choice," Charlotte said. "Unless she wants to rack up legal bills defending an unwinnable position." We set the lemonade stand back up properly, and Charlotte even helped Tyler add some additional signage. She had to leave for a meeting downtown, but she promised to keep her phone on in case Patricia tried anything else. For the next hour, things were quiet. Tyler sold lemonade to a few neighbors who'd heard about the morning's drama and wanted to show their support. Mrs. Chen from 2 houses down bought 3 cups, even though she was the only person there. The Kowalski family stopped by with their kids, and each bought a cup. Then Patricia's Lexus came rolling back down the street. She parked in front of my house again, but this time she had someone with her. A man in his 50s climbed out of the passenger seat, wearing khakis and a polo shirt with the Meadowbrook Heights HOA logo embroidered on it. "Marcus, this is Donald Fletcher, the HOA's legal consultant," Patricia said. Donald extended his hand and I shook it warily. "Mr. Barrett, I understand there's been some confusion about the lemonade stand." "No confusion on my end," I said. "Arizona state law specifically protects children's lemonade stands from HOA interference." Donald's expression didn't change. "I've reviewed House Bill 2290, and I believe there may be some nuance to the interpretation that your daughter might not have considered." "What kind of nuance?" I asked. "The law protects occasional temporary stands," Donald said. "The key word being occasional. If your grandson intends to operate this stand every day for the entire summer, that could be interpreted as a regular commercial operation, which would fall outside the protection of the statute." I felt my stomach sink a little. Tyler had indeed told me he wanted to run the stand every day until school started back up in August. "I'm going to need to call my daughter again," I said. Donald nodded. "That's fine. In the meantime, I'd recommend your grandson take a break from operations until we can sort this out." "He's not shutting down," I said. "Not until I've talked to Charlotte." Patricia's face tightened. "Marcus, you're making this more difficult than it needs to be." "I'm protecting my grandson's rights," I shot back. I dialed Charlotte again, and this time I put her on speaker so Donald could hear. "Dad, what's happening?" The HOA brought their legal consultant. "He's claiming that daily operation doesn't count as occasional or temporary under the law." "Put him on," Charlotte said, her voice cold. I held the phone toward Donald. "This is Charlotte Barrett Daniels, licensed to practice in Arizona. State your interpretation of House Bill 2290. Donald cleared his throat. "Miss Barrett Daniels, I'm simply pointing out that the statute uses the term occasional, which implies infrequent operation. A daily stand running for 3 months would arguably exceed that definition." "Have you read the legislative history?" Charlotte asked. "I've reviewed the statute itself." "So that's a no," Charlotte said. "The legislative history makes it explicitly clear that the law was intended to protect children's entrepreneurial activities during summer vacation. Multiple lawmakers specifically mentioned multi-week operations in their floor speeches. The word occasional was included to distinguish these activities from adults running permanent businesses, not to limit how often during the summer a child can operate a stand. Donald was quiet for a moment. That's an interesting interpretation. It's not an interpretation. It's the actual intent of the law, Charlotte said. I have the complete legislative record, including committee meetings and floor debate transcripts. I can email them to you right now if you'd like. That won't be necessary, Donald said quickly. Good. Then we're agreed that my son can continue operating his lemonade stand without interference from the HOA. Patricia grabbed the phone from my hand. Now just wait a minute. Even if the lemonade stand itself is legal, there are still other regulations. Section 8C clearly states that all structures placed in front yards require Architectural Review Committee approval. It's a card table, I said. It's a structure, Patricia insisted. Charlotte's voice came through the speaker, sharp and clear. Arizona Revised Statute 33-1808 specifically prohibits HOAs from requiring approval for temporary decorative items and structures. A lemonade stand operated by a minor for a limited duration absolutely falls under that category. This has been upheld in Smithson v. Desert Valley, HOA, and Martinez v. Canyon Ridge Community Association. I had no idea if those were real cases, but Donald's face suggested they were. He put his hand on Patricia's shoulder. Miss Hendricks, I think we need to reconsider our position here. Reconsider? We're just supposed to let people ignore our bylaws. The bylaws can't violate state law, Donald said quietly. If we push this, we'll lose, and the HOA will be liable for legal fees. Potentially substantial legal fees if Miss Barrett Daniels decides to pursue damages for harassment. I absolutely will pursue damages, Charlotte said through the phone. And I'll also file a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate, which oversees HOA management companies. Violations of state statute can result in serious penalties. Patricia's face had gone from red to pale. She looked at Donald, then at me, then at Tyler sitting hopefully behind his lemonade stand. Fine, she said. But if there are any other violations, any complaints from neighbors about noise or traffic or anything else, I'm coming back. Looking forward to it, I said. They got back in the Lexus and drove away. I kept Charlotte on the line. Thank you, sweetheart. You just made your son's whole summer. Tell him I want a full report on sales numbers, Charlotte said. And Dad, call me immediately if Patricia tries anything else. I mean anything. At this point, I'd actually enjoy taking her to court. Will do, I said, ending the call. Tyler had the biggest smile on his face. Did we win? We won, I confirmed. The rest of that day was fantastic. Word spread through the neighborhood about the standoff, and suddenly, Tyler's lemonade stand became the place to be. People stopped by not just for lemonade, but to hear the story and show their support. Tyler made $73 by the time the sun started going down. I thought that would be the end of it. Patricia had been embarrassed, the HOA had backed down, and everything could go back to normal, but I should have known better. People like Patricia Hendricks don't handle defeat well. 3 days later, I found a notice stuck to my front door. The Architectural Review Committee had denied a request I'd submitted 6 weeks earlier to repaint my garage door. The reason given was vague. Color not in compliance with community aesthetic standards. I'd chosen a color from the pre-approved palette in the HOA handbook. There was no way it wasn't compliant. The next day, I got a citation for my trash cans being visible from the street. They'd been in the same spot for 3 years, and suddenly, it was a problem. The day after that, another citation because my lawn was supposedly a 1/4 inch too tall according to the maximum height requirements. Patricia was retaliating, and she wasn't being subtle about it. I documented everything, took photos, and forwarded it all to Charlotte. She sent a letter to the HOA board, officially notifying them that any retaliatory actions against our family would result in legal action. The letter cited specific Arizona statutes protecting homeowners from HOA retaliation. The citation stopped, but the tension didn't. Patricia would drive past my house multiple times a day, slowing down each time like she was looking for something to cite. Other board members started giving me cold looks at the mailbox. The neighborhood Facebook group, which Patricia moderated, suddenly had new rules posted about maintaining community standards and respecting established regulations. Tyler kept running his lemonade stand, oblivious to most of the adult drama. He'd made over $300 in the first 2 weeks, and he was already planning exactly which bike he wanted to buy. Then things escalated in a way I didn't expect. I came home from a morning grocery run to find Tyler crying in the driveway. His lemonade stand table was on its side, his signs were torn, and there was lemonade spilled all over the concrete. "What happened?" I asked, rushing over to him. "A man came and knocked everything over," Tyler said between sobs. "He said we were breaking the rules, and this is what happens to rule breakers." My blood went cold. "What did this man look like?" "He was old like you. He had a bald head and was wearing a blue shirt." That description matched Kenneth Morrison, Patricia's next-door neighbor and one of the most vocal HOA supporters in the community. He'd been on the board for over a decade. I called Charlotte immediately. "Someone vandalized Tyler's stand. He's traumatized." "Who?" Charlotte asked, and I could hear her moving, probably already heading to her car. "Tyler says it was an older bald man in a blue shirt. That matches Kenneth Morrison." "Did anyone else see it?" "I don't know. It just happened." "I'm calling the police," Charlotte said. "That's assault, intimidation, and destruction of property. Do not touch anything at the scene." "Charlotte, it's a lemonade stand." "It's a crime scene now," she said firmly. "I'm serious, Dad. Don't clean anything up." She hung up, and I stood there in my driveway with my crying grandson, looking at the wreckage of his small business venture. Mrs. Chen came outside when she saw us. "Oh my goodness, what happened?" she asked. "Did you see anything?" I asked her. "I heard yelling, but I was in my back garden." By the time I came around front, I just saw Kenneth Morrison walking back toward his house. I thought maybe he'd stopped to buy lemonade. "He destroyed the stand instead," I said. Mrs. Chen's expression hardened. "I'll tell that to the police if they ask." Kenneth Morrison has been a bully in this neighborhood for years. Someone needs to stand up to these people. The Phoenix Police Department sent an officer within 20 minutes. Officer Martinez took Tyler's statement very seriously, treating him with the same respect he'd give an adult witness. He photographed everything, collected the torn signs as evidence, and took detailed notes. Charlotte arrived while Officer Martinez was still there. She'd brought a camera and took her own photos from multiple angles. She also recorded a video statement from Tyler, which Officer Martinez said could be useful. "I've got Morrison's address," Officer Martinez said. "I'm going to go talk to him now. Miss Barrett Daniels, you should know that based on the victim's age and the intimidation factor, this could potentially be charged as aggravated assault." "I want maximum charges filed," Charlotte said. This was targeted harassment of a minor in retaliation for exercising his legal rights. Officer Martinez nodded and headed down the street. Charlotte, Tyler, and I went inside the house. I made Tyler some lunch while Charlotte started making phone calls. She contacted the Homeowner Association Management Company directly, demanding an emergency board meeting. She also filed a formal complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate against both Patricia Hendricks and Kenneth Morrison. An hour later, Officer Martinez returned. Kenneth Morrison admitted to knocking over the lemonade stand. He claims he was trying to enforce HOA rules and got carried away. He's been cited for criminal damage and disorderly conduct. The city attorney will review for additional charges. What happens now? I asked. He'll have a court date. Given his admission and the witness statements, I'd expect him to plead guilty or no contest. He'll probably get probation, community service, and restitution. After Officer Martinez left, Charlotte sat down with Tyler and me at the kitchen table. Here's what's going to happen next. The HOA management company has scheduled an emergency board meeting for tomorrow night. I've already informed them I'll be attending as your representative, and I've submitted a formal complaint against both Patricia Hendricks and Kenneth Morrison, demanding their removal from the board. Can they actually be removed? I asked. The HOA bylaws include provisions for removing board members who violate their fiduciary duties or engage in illegal conduct. Kenneth's actions today clearly qualify. Patricia's retaliation pattern creates liability for the HOA, which is a breach of her duty as president. They're not going to go quietly, I said. I don't expect them to, Charlotte replied, but they don't have a choice. If the board doesn't remove them, I'm filing a lawsuit against the HOA, Patricia, and Kenneth individually. The management company knows this, and they're already nervous. HOA insurance doesn't cover intentional illegal acts, so the board members would be personally liable for damages. Tyler had been listening quietly. Mom, does this mean I can't do the lemonade stand anymore? Charlotte hugged him. Absolutely not. We're setting up your stand again tomorrow, and I'm going to be right here with you. Nobody is going to intimidate you or take away your rights. The next day was Saturday. Charlotte had taken the day off work, and she helped Tyler set up an even better lemonade stand than before. She'd bought a proper folding table, a bright yellow tablecloth, and helped him make professional-looking signs with laminated prints. She also set up a camera on our front porch, aimed directly at the stand. Just in case anyone else gets ideas, she explained. Word had spread through the neighborhood about what Kenneth Morrison had done. Throughout the day, a steady stream of neighbors stopped by to buy lemonade and express their outrage. Many of them I'd never even talked to before. They told stories about their own run-ins with Patricia and Kenneth over the years. Citations for trivial violations, denied requests for reasonable home improvements, and generally hostile enforcement of every minor rule. That woman cited me because my Christmas lights were still up on January 2nd, one man told me. January 2nd, they'd barely been up for a week. Kenneth tried to fine us for parking our car on the street overnight when we had guests, another neighbor said. Even though there's nothing in the bylaws about overnight street parking. By the time the emergency board meeting rolled around that evening, I had a much clearer picture of how Patricia and Kenneth had been running the HOA. They'd created an environment of fear and petty enforcement that had most homeowners afraid to do anything that might draw attention. The meeting was held at the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance. Charlotte and I arrived 15 minutes early. The room was already packed. Apparently, word had gotten out, and dozens of homeowners had shown up to watch what was going to happen. Patricia sat at the front table with the other 4 board members. Kenneth was nowhere to be seen. Patricia's face was tight and controlled, but I could see tension in her shoulders. The HOA management company had sent their senior representative, a woman named Helen Kravitz who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. She called the meeting to order and immediately turned to Charlotte. Miss Barrett Daniels, you've requested this emergency meeting to address complaints against board members. Please present your concerns. Charlotte stood up and walked to the front of the room. She'd brought a briefcase full of documents, and she'd clearly prepared like this was a court hearing. "Thank you, Miss Kravitz. I'm here representing my father, Marcus Barrett, and his grandson, Tyler Barrett, who are homeowners and residents of Meadowbrook Heights. Over the past 2 weeks, they have been subjected to systematic harassment, retaliation, and ultimately criminal assault by members of this HOA board." She laid out everything chronologically. The initial attempt to shut down the lemonade stand despite clear state law protecting it. The retaliatory citations. Kenneth Morrison's destruction of property and intimidation of a minor. She provided copies of police reports, photographs, witness statements, and her own legal analysis. Patricia tried to interrupt several times. "This is all a misunderstanding. We were simply trying to enforce our community standards." Charlotte cut her off. "State law is not a misunderstanding, Miss Hendricks. Your attempt to ban a legally protected activity was the first violation. Your pattern of retaliatory citations against my father was the second violation. And Mr. Morrison's criminal conduct was the third and most serious violation. These actions have exposed this HOA to substantial legal liability." One of the other board members, a younger woman named Jennifer, spoke up. "Can we just take a step back? I wasn't aware of most of this." Patricia handles most of the day-to-day citations and enforcement. "That's part of the problem," Charlotte said. "The board has apparently delegated enforcement authority to Miss Hendricks without proper oversight. As a result, she's been able to conduct a personal vendetta against my family without accountability." Helen Kravitz cleared her throat. "Miss Barrett Daniels, what resolution are you seeking?" "The immediate resignation or removal of Patricia Hendricks as HOA president and board member." "The immediate removal of Kenneth Morrison from the board." "A formal written apology to Tyler Barrett." "Reimbursement for all damaged property." "And a comprehensive review of HOA enforcement practices to ensure compliance with state law." "This is outrageous," Patricia said, standing up. "I've served this community for 8 years. I've kept our property values high and maintained our standards. I'm not going to be forced out because some people don't want to follow simple rules." "You violated state law," Charlotte said calmly. "You retaliated against a homeowner. And your associate on the board committed criminal assault against a 9-year-old child. Your service is no longer wanted or appropriate." Helen looked at the other board members. "I need to be clear about the management company's position. If the board does not take appropriate action to address these violations, we will recommend that all homeowners in Meadowbrook Heights seek alternative management. The liability exposure is too significant for us to continue representation." That got everyone's attention. Jennifer and the 2 other board members who hadn't been involved started whispering among themselves. Patricia remained standing, her hands gripping the table. "I'd like to call for a vote," Jennifer said. "I move that Patricia Hendricks be removed from her position as president and as a board member, effective immediately, due to violations of her fiduciary duty and creation of legal liability for the association." "Second," said another board member, a man named Robert. Helen conducted the vote. Jennifer, Robert, and the 4th board member named Susan all voted yes. Patricia obviously voted no. With Kenneth absent, the motion carried 3-1. Patricia's face went through several shades of red and white. "You can't do this to me. I'll sue the HOA. I'll sue all of you individually." Charlotte spoke up. "If you sue, Miss Hendricks, I will personally represent the HOA and countersue you for the damages you've caused. I will also ensure that every detail of your conduct becomes part of the public record. I don't think you want that." Patricia grabbed her bag and stormed out of the room without another word. The remaining board members voted unanimously to remove Kenneth Morrison as well. Jennifer was elected as the new president, and they scheduled a follow-up meeting to recruit new board members. As the meeting broke up, several neighbors came over to thank Charlotte and me. Mrs. Chen gave Tyler a $20 bill and told him to keep up the lemonade stand. The man who'd been cited for Christmas lights shook my hand and said it was about time someone stood up to the board. Helen Kravitz pulled Charlotte aside. "I want to apologize. The management company should have been monitoring the board's actions more closely. We've had complaints about Patricia before, but we didn't realize how bad things had gotten." "Make sure the new board gets proper training on state law," Charlotte said, "and implement some oversight procedures so this doesn't happen again." "We will," Helen promised. Walking back to our house, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Tyler was chattering excitedly about how his mom had been so cool in the meeting. Charlotte just smiled and squeezed his hand, but the story wasn't quite over yet. 2 weeks later, Kenneth Morrison's court date arrived. Charlotte insisted we attend, and she'd coordinated with the city attorney's office beforehand. The prosecutor had agreed to recommend probation in exchange for a guilty plea, restitution to Tyler, and a formal apology. Kenneth showed up with his own lawyer, but when they saw the evidence and heard Tyler's testimony in the judge's chambers, they agreed to the plea deal. Kenneth was required to pay Tyler $500 for damaged property and emotional distress, complete 50 hours of community service, and write a formal letter of apology. The judge, a woman in her 60s who reminded me of my own mother, had some choice words for Kenneth before accepting the plea. "Mr. Morrison, I've been on the bench for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of cases involving homeowner associations. Most of them are petty disputes that never should have ended up in court. But what you did here was cross a line. You didn't just damage property. You intimidated and frightened a child for doing something completely legal and wholesome. That tells me something troubling about your character." Kenneth looked down at the floor. "These HOA boards seem to attract people who enjoy having a small amount of power over their neighbors," the judge continued. "But power comes with responsibility. You forgot that, and this young man paid the price. I hope this experience teaches you something about proportionality and basic decency." After the hearing, Charlotte walked Tyler up to Kenneth in the courthouse hallway. "Mr. Morrison owes you an apology," she said. Kenneth looked uncomfortable, but his lawyer nudged him. "I'm sorry, Tyler. What I did was wrong. I shouldn't have knocked over your stand or yelled at you. I hope you'll continue your business." Tyler, to his credit, just nodded and said, "Okay." We left the courthouse and went out for ice cream to celebrate. Tyler wanted to know if he could use some of the restitution money to buy his bike, or if he should keep saving from the lemonade stand. "That's your decision," I told him. "You earned all of that money, the restitution and what you made from selling lemonade." "I want to keep the stand going," Tyler said. "It's fun, and people are really nice to me now." Charlotte laughed. "You've become the most popular kid in the neighborhood." That was true. Tyler's lemonade stand had become something of a neighborhood institution. Kids from other streets would ride their bikes over to hang out. Parents would stop by after work to chat. Tyler had even started offering cookies and brownies alongside the lemonade, which he'd bake with his mother on weekends. The new HOA board under Jennifer's leadership was a dramatic improvement. They held open meetings where homeowners could actually voice concerns. They reviewed all the bylaws and removed or modified rules that conflicted with state law or were unnecessarily restrictive. They created a simple online system for submitting architectural review requests that actually responded within a reasonable time frame. Patricia moved out of the neighborhood 3 months later. Rumor had it she'd bought a condo in Scottsdale where she wouldn't have to deal with HOA drama anymore. The irony of that wasn't lost on anyone. Kenneth stayed in his house but kept a very low profile. I'd see him occasionally checking his mail or getting into his car, but he never made eye contact with anyone. His wife left him about 6 months after the court case. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she'd been embarrassed by his behavior and had apparently been dealing with his controlling tendencies for years. As summer turned to fall, Tyler finally bought his bike. He'd earned over $1,000 from the lemonade stand, and he'd chosen a really nice mountain bike that he proudly rode around the neighborhood. He'd already announced plans to run the stand again next summer. The whole experience taught me something about standing up for your rights, even when it seems easier to just comply with unreasonable demands. If Charlotte hadn't known the law, if she hadn't been willing to fight back, Tyler would have lost an important learning experience. He would have learned that bullies win and that authority figures can't be challenged. Instead, he learned that the law protects people, even kids running lemonade stands. He learned that his mother and grandfather would fight for him. And he learned that sometimes doing the right thing means standing up to people who seem powerful, but are actually just petty bureaucrats on a power trip. One Saturday evening in October, long after Tyler's lemonade stand had closed for the season, Jennifer stopped by the house. She'd been doing a good job as HOA president, and most of the neighborhood was happy with the changes. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "What happened with Patricia and Kenneth was a wake-up call for a lot of us. We'd gotten used to the way things were, even though we knew it wasn't right. Your family standing up to them gave the rest of us permission to demand better." "I appreciate that," I said. "Though honestly, my daughter deserves most of the credit. I was ready to just make Tyler take down the stand to avoid conflict." Jennifer smiled. "But you didn't. You called Charlotte. You supported Tyler. That matters." After she left, I sat on my front porch and looked out at the quiet street. The neighborhood felt different now. People seemed friendlier, more willing to chat and help each other out. Without the constant fear of citations and fines for minor violations, homeowners felt more comfortable actually living in and enjoying their properties. Charlotte stopped by later that evening to pick up Tyler. He'd been staying with me for the week while she and her husband took care of some business matters. "How's the newest entrepreneur?" she asked, ruffling Tyler's hair. "I've been working on my business plan for next summer," Tyler said seriously. "I'm thinking about expanding into fresh fruit smoothies. The profit margins are better and I can charge more," Charlotte laughed. "You're going to be running a corporation by the time you're 12. As they were leaving, Charlotte turned back to me. "You know, I've been thinking about writing an article about this case for the Arizona Bar Journal. The intersection of HOA law and children's rights is actually a really interesting legal topic." "Will you mention Tyler's lemonade stand specifically?" I asked. "Only if he agrees. But I think it would be good for other lawyers to know about House Bill 2290. A lot of attorneys don't specialize in HOA law, so they might not be aware of these protections." "Do it," I said. "Maybe it'll help some other kids somewhere not get their lemonade stand shut down." The article came out 3 months later. Charlotte sent me a copy, and I was surprised by how thoroughly she'd researched the topic. She'd found dozens of cases across the country where HOAs had shut down children's lemonade stands, bake sales, and other small entrepreneurial ventures. She documented how various states had responded with legislation protecting these activities. And she'd used Tyler's case as an example of how the law works in practice. The article got some attention. Charlotte was invited to speak at a legal conference about HOA law and property rights. A state representative contacted her about strengthening Arizona's existing protections for children's business activities. And several lawyers reached out asking if they could cite her article in their own cases. For me, though, the best outcome was watching Tyler grow more confident and capable. He'd learned practical math skills running the stand. He'd learned customer service and how to talk to adults. He'd learned about standing up for himself and understanding his rights. No classroom could have taught him those lessons as effectively as those summer months running his lemonade stand. When spring rolled around again, Tyler started planning his second season. This time, he'd saved up enough money from the previous year to invest in better supplies. He bought a professional-grade beverage dispenser, a proper cash box, and even created a simple website where neighbors could pre-order smoothies for pickup. The first day of the new season, dozens of neighbors stopped by. Mrs. Chen bought the first smoothie. Jennifer from the HOA board came by with her kids. Even some people from other neighborhoods who'd heard about the previous year's drama made the trip to support Tyler. Charlotte took the day off work to help Tyler with the grand reopening. She'd made professional signs and even created social media accounts for what Tyler was now calling Tyler's Fresh Stand. The name made me smile. He'd moved beyond just lemonade. Around noon, a local news crew showed up. Apparently, someone had tipped them off about the story, and they wanted to do a segment on the kid who'd fought the HOA and won. Tyler handled the interview like a pro, explaining what had happened and how his mom had helped him understand his rights. The segment aired that evening on the local news. The anchor introduced it as a feel-good story about standing up to bureaucracy and childhood entrepreneurship. They showed clips of Tyler serving smoothies, interviewed Charlotte about the legal aspects, and even got some comments from neighbors about how the neighborhood had changed since Patricia and Kenneth left the board. The publicity brought even more customers. For the next few weeks, Tyler's stand was constantly busy. He had to recruit some of his friends to help out during peak hours. They were happy to assist because Tyler paid them fairly, and everyone was having fun. One afternoon in late May, an older couple I didn't recognize pulled up in a BMW. The woman got out and walked over to where Tyler was serving a customer. "Are you Tyler Barrett?" she asked. Tyler nodded, a little wary after everything that had happened the previous year. "I'm Susan Patterson. I saw your story on the news. My grandson is about your age, and he wants to start a lemonade stand in our neighborhood in Temp. But our HOA is giving him problems. Do you think your mother might be willing to talk to me?" I stepped in at that point. "I'm Tyler's grandfather. Let me get you Charlotte's contact information." I gave her Charlotte's business card, and Susan thanked us profusely before buying 2 smoothies. As she was leaving, she turned back. "What you did last year, standing up to those bullies, that meant something. More people should do that." Over the next year, Charlotte ended up taking on 3 more cases involving HOA disputes and children's lemonade stands or similar activities. She won all 3 cases, establishing herself as something of an expert in that particular niche of law. 2 of the cases involved HOAs backing down after receiving her initial letter. The third went to arbitration, where Charlotte absolutely demolished the HOA's arguments. The Phoenix area legal community started referring to her as the Lemonade Lawyer, a nickname she found both amusing and slightly embarrassing. But she never turned down a case where a kid was being prevented from running a lemonade stand or similar venture. She told me it reminded her why she'd gone to law school in the first place. "I didn't go to law school to help corporations maximize profits," she said one evening over dinner. "I went because I wanted to help people stand up for themselves against systems that treat them unfairly." These HOA cases, as small as they might seem, they're exactly that. Tyler ran his stand for 3 summers total before he aged out of the interest. By the time he was 12, he'd moved on to other pursuits, mainly basketball and video game design. But the money he'd earned from those summers had been deposited into a savings account for college, and the lessons he'd learned stayed with him. The neighborhood continued to thrive under the new HOA leadership. Jennifer served 2 terms as president before stepping down and being replaced by Robert, who was equally reasonable and focused on actually improving the community rather than nitpicking residents. They used HOA funds to upgrade the community center, improve landscaping at the entrance, and organize neighborhood events that brought people together. The Architectural Review Committee became an actual committee instead of Patricia's personal fiefdom. They approved reasonable requests quickly and worked with homeowners on projects rather than just denying things arbitrarily. The neighborhood Facebook group became a place for actual community discussion instead of Patricia's rule enforcement platform. Several other families started letting their kids run temporary summer businesses. There was a car wash one summer, a dog walking service, a mother-daughter team that sold homemade jewelry. The new HOA board supported all of it, recognizing that these activities made the neighborhood more vibrant and taught kids valuable skills. Looking back on everything that happened, I'm struck by how a simple lemonade stand became a catalyst for real change. It wasn't just about Tyler's right to sell lemonade. It was about an entire community living under the thumb of petty tyrants and finally deciding they'd had enough. Patricia and Kenneth thought they were protecting property values and maintaining standards. But what they were really doing was making people miserable and stifling the kind of community life that makes a neighborhood worth living in. It took a 9-year-old kid with an entrepreneurial spirit and a lawyer mother who knew the law to expose that and force change. 5 years after the lemonade stand incident, Tyler was getting ready to start high school. He'd grown into a confident, capable young man. He'd taken up competitive debate, no doubt influenced by watching his mother in action all those years ago. He was already talking about law school or business school for college. Charlotte had made full partner at her firm and had started a pro bono program specifically focused on HOA disputes involving children's rights. She'd helped dozens of families across Arizona stand up to overreaching HOAs. She'd also worked with state legislators to strengthen protections and increase penalties for HOAs that violated state law. As for me, I'd become something of a neighborhood elder statesman. People would stop by to ask my advice on dealing with the HOA or to tell me stories about their kids' summer businesses. I'd helped several families navigate the process of getting kids' activities approved, though with the new board, approval was rarely an issue. One summer evening, I was sitting on my porch when a young family moved into the house where Patricia used to live. They had a daughter about 6 years old who reminded me of Tyler at that age, full of energy and ideas. A few days later, I saw her setting up a lemonade stand in her driveway. I walked over and bought a cup. "This is great lemonade," I told her. "What's your name?" "Emma," she said shyly. "Are you Mr. Barrett? My parents said your grandson used to have a lemonade stand too." "He sure did," I said, "and I bet yours is going to be just as successful." Her father came out of the house and introduced himself. "I'm David. We heard about what happened here a few years ago. That was actually one of the reasons we chose this neighborhood. We liked that the community stood up for a kid's right to run a lemonade stand." "Well, you picked a good place to live," I said. "The HOA board is reasonable now and people look out for each other." As I walked back to my house, I thought about how far the neighborhood had come. From a place where people were afraid to put up Christmas lights a day too late or park on the street to a place where kids could run lemonade stands and families felt comfortable actually living their lives. All because a 9-year-old wanted to earn money for a bike, and his lawyer mother knew the law. Sometimes the smallest acts of resistance against unreasonable authority create the biggest changes. Tyler's lemonade stand didn't just teach him about business and standing up for his rights. It taught an entire community that they didn't have to accept being pushed around by petty bureaucrats. It showed that laws exist to protect people, including kids selling lemonade on a hot summer day. I still have one of Tyler's original lemonade stand signs hanging in my garage. The poster board is faded now, and the marker has bled through in places, but I keep it as a reminder. A reminder that doing the right thing often means pushing back against people who claim to have authority but are really just bullies. A reminder that knowing your rights and being willing to fight for them matters. And a reminder that sometimes the most important legal battles are fought not in courtrooms but in suburban driveways over cups of lemonade sold by a kid with a dream. The neighborhood continued to evolve in positive ways. Property values actually increased once the oppressive enforcement regime ended, contradicting Patricia's dire predictions. People took better care of their homes because they wanted to, not because they were afraid of citations. The community became known in the wider Phoenix area as a great place to raise families, specifically because of the supportive environment and reasonable HOA. Tyler's now a teenager with plans and dreams far beyond lemonade stands, but he still talks about those summers as formative experiences. Charlotte continues to fight the good fight, representing families and individuals against overreaching HOAs and other forms of petty bureaucratic overreach. And I get to sit on my porch in the evenings, watching kids ride bikes and play in the street, knowing that I played a small part in making this neighborhood a place where families can actually thrive. The lemonade stand might be gone, but its legacy remains. And that, more than anything else, makes me proud of what we accomplished together. My grandson with his entrepreneurial spirit, my daughter with her legal knowledge and fierce protection of rights, and me, just a grandfather who refused to let bullies crush a child's dreams. Sometimes that is all it takes to change everything.